Now, with no further ado, let's get into the main course. The reason we here, the Tudor Parfitt interview with our brother Garfield. All right, we're gonna start at the 13-minute marker, around the 12 to 13-minute marker.
Quite regularly articulated through the idea of the lost, or the sense that they do belong to the people of Israel through this myth. But very often it's concealing some historical truth.
You see what he just said? See, Garfield tried to say, well, in your book, and you wrote a book about the Israelites being a myth, the lost tribe being a myth, and these guys are following a myth. But he's talking about myth, and he said, oftentimes myth conceals historical truth. That's what Tudor Parfitt just told Garfield. And look at his face. He's not liking that, because he's been going around pushing myth as if it's pure fiction. Rob Bourne has done the same thing. When you read Ida Bruder's books, he says, I'm not using the term myth to denote pure fiction, because these myths contain historical realities. That's the same thing Tudor Parfitt says. Why do they share the same sentiment? Because Edith Bruder is a student of Tudor Parfitt. She was under the tutelage of Tudor Parfitt. She wrote her doctoral thesis and submitted it to Parfitt. So they're saying the same exact thing. So you got beat up on that point.
So let's cut to the chase. The existence of a desire to identify with the people of Israel among African Americans, or between people of African origin living in Central America, is quite regularly articulated through the idea of the lost tribes. This in itself is a myth, and very often it is formed as a result of a kind of metaphorical identification with the people of Israel. However, that's not the only way.
You see him shaking his head. Oh, metaphorical. I like that. I like that. Watch this. However, that's not the only way. Watch this.
Which a sense of belonging to the people of Israel might have occurred among slave populations in the 18th and early 19th century. And there's some evidence, not very much, but there is some evidence that slaves had an idea of Judaism through Jewish manifestations in Africa. So
we've been saying this for years. He said there's some idea that slaves had an idea of Judaism through Jewish manifestations in Africa. Brother Garfield is on record, and we're going to pull the clip up after Tudor Parfitt gets done spanking him, of him saying, show me one Jew that got off a slave ship, one African American, or one African that got off a slave ship claiming to be a Jew, which we already killed that with Uncle Bill. We killed that with Joseph Pellegrino, and we killed that with the two brothers of the Jewish nation that was found down in South Carolina. We killed that. They came off slave ships.
An obvious example is Equiano. I'm sure you all know about him.
Yes, sir.
A former slave who mentioned Judaic practices among the Igbo. This is right at the end of the 18th century. It's a very interesting text. And he was talking about Judaism in Nigeria long before anybody had really said very much about the Igbo.
Long before anybody ever said anything about the Igbo, he noticed the Judaic practices and wrote it down in his book. There's nothing Garfield can do but sit there and have egg on his face, man. This is something we've been telling these Negroes for years. And Tudor Parfitt had to come up there, shine his boot, and stump you, man. Proverbially, of course. But you got stumped.
Which was only to happen over the next few decades. Some of my recent work, if you read the hybrid very attentively, you'll have to go to the footnotes. You will see there's got a lot of evidence produced for black Jewish communities in different parts of West Africa.
Lots of evidence produced for black Jewish presences across West Africa. Look at Garfield's face. Look at his face. Oh, you're not supposed to say that. We've been telling you Negroes this for years. For years. And you bucked against it. You understand? You kicked against the pricks, as Paul would say it. And if no one don't know what a prick is what we use to tame wild cattle or wild livestock. And if they kicked against it, the knife or the blade on the end of it would drive deeper and deeper into their flesh. It got more and more painful the more they kicked against it.
Which are not sort of based upon a particular reading of tribal history, let's put it like that.
It's not based on tribal history. He's going to get into it. Why?
But are based on fairly hard historical fact.
Hard historical fact. I've done a whole video on what he's going to bring up. The Black Sephardi Jews. You can go to Genesis 49 and see it. 2 years ago. Watch.
And this hard historical fact is the expulsion of the Jews from Spain and from Portugal at the end of the 15th century, subsequent to which
what Tudor Parfitt is saying, J.A. Rogers said damn near 100 years ago. We've been saying this, that these Jews from Sephardim went and dispersed to Costa Guinea, Principe, Sao Tome, had these children and survived. Some of them got caught up as slaves. Some of them were slave traders. We've been saying this. And they were black. You guys have bucked against this for years. And Tudor Parfitt is cementing that and has cemented it in his books. So I know you didn't read the book that's on the screen.
A lot of Jews settled, first of all, in northwest Africa, places like Senegal, in the islands, which I'm sure you know about, Saint Tome and Principe,
yes, sir.
Principally, and then less known along the coast of Guinea, so that in the middle of the 16th century, 1560 to be precise, the Portuguese Archbishop of Goa in India proclaimed that Judaism is a kind of horrible illness which has killed millions of people throughout history, and the result of being Jewish was to be covered in shame, to fail in everything, even among the black Jews of Guinea. So, in other words, the existence of Jews in the western part of Africa was absolutely accepted at the time.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that? This is what y'all been fighting against for years. The existence of black Jews was absolutely accepted at the time of that writing. They understood that there were Jews in Western Africa on the coast of Guinea, man. We have done presentation upon presentation. We have dropped source after source. We have showed you over and over again. J.A. Rogers said the same exact thing, and his book is about 100 years old now, man. And you guys lambasted it, called these people, and called J.A. Rogers pseudo. We can't trust these people. And we got to wait on the British Indiana Jones, a.k.a. Tudor Parfitt, to vindicate these claims. Because you hate your history. You hate who you are. Y'all always try to throw that on us. Oh, y'all hate your... No, you hate your history because this is a part of your history. It's Black History Month, ain't it? Huh? Shouldn't you be educating the people on these black Jewish communities that proliferated West Africa, in Guinea, in Senegal, in Principe, in Sao Tome, right? The synagogue community, right? The Degregados, the Black Sephardim.
So our God did all of this. So at this point, as an Israelite nation, no matter what nation Israel is scattered in, they do not have an identity. Okay? They don't know who they are and where they come from. And the only identity they got is what those who rule over them have told them. Okay? They took away our name Israel and replaced it with Black. Black Brazilian. Blacks from the Caribbean or the West Indies. Blacks in the United States. So they've called us all kind of names. Just black all over the place. That's what we have become now, is just a color. Okay? We're no longer the nation of Israel. We are divided and dispersed across the world. And all we are now is just a color. Go and ask Israel where they from. And they'll tell you that I'm from this state or this city. Or some of them will say, I am a African American. So they belong to 2 continents. And even if they say Africa, Africa has 54 nations and over 1 billion people. Many countries in Africa. What country are you from? And they simply don't know. But the Lord told us that He was going to scatter us and take our identity away from us. And that has come to pass. And our slave masters, many of them know who we are. That's to say, the men that's in power, that's in charge. They know who we are, but they took our identity and gave it to somebody else. They gave our identity to the fake Jews, and then they created a history for us. It begins with slavery, and it ends with Martin Luther King Jr. And that's all we know. But what we need to understand, Israel, is this Bible is our history. God gave His words to the prophets. And He told every prophet, you write what I tell you in a book. Because the day is coming when I'm going to disperse my children over the face of the globe. They ain't going to know who they are and where they come from. But I want you to write this in a book, and I'm going to have this book to go into captivity with them. And it's going to be written in the language of their enemies. And whenever I'm ready for them to understand who they are, this book is going to be waiting on them. And we read this book called the Bible. We read the prophecies in this Bible concerning the nation of Israel. And lo and behold, as we looked and looked and looked, we realized that this book called the Bible is all about us. It goes back thousands and thousands of years. This book called the Bible is the history of the black man in the Americas. And now when somebody asks you, where is your homeland? You can now point to Israel. The land of Israel is the homeland of the black man and the black woman in the Americas. But what people don't understand is our history is taught 12 months out of the year. Not just in the Americas, but all over the world. Every time someone who called themselves a Christian begin to open this Bible and preach from it, they are preaching Israelite history, or who they call the black man or black history. We need to understand this. And just like the Lord said he was going to scatter us, Israel, he also said he was one day coming to gather us and put us back in that homeland that we done forgot about, that we have no remembrance of. He's going to come back and he's going to restore us. But while we in captivity, we got somebody living in our land. We got a land just like everybody else, Israel. So when they ask you now, where's your homeland? Don't be shy. Don't be scared. You point to your homeland. You take out a map, pull it up on the phone, whatever you got to do, and say, this is where my ancestors is from. And this is the land that we going back to at the second coming of the Messiah. And their eyes should get big as 50-cent pieces. But that's their problem. Let them deal with it.